Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Culture Collective movie review powered by Big Gold Belt Media. Today, we are here to talk about one of the most anticipated remakes of the year, and this is The Running Man. And here's a quick synopsis. In the near future, The Running Man is a top-rated television show, a deadly competition where contestants must survive 30 days while being hunted by professional assassins. Desperate for money to save his sick daughter, Ben Richards is convinced by the show's ruthless producer to enter the game as a last resort. And this one stars Glenn Powell, Josh Brolin, and Coleman Domingo. Now, if you remember the 1987 original Running Man, you also will remember that film, besides the name and kind of the concept of what would be the Running Man, that is the only things it took from the source material written by Stephen King. Here, with this version of The Running Man in 2025, we get a more faithful adaptation of the story, as we're immediately thrown into the mix of everything, and we introduce to Glenn Powell's character, Ben Richards, as they let us know he has a sick daughter. He needs money. He cannot find work. And then we get to see his wife, who also is struggling making money, but she's kind of a waitress / lady of the night. The novel's very clear what she is. The film not so much so, and I think it's left in the dark just because that can be a little bit extreme for the way the novel pointed her to be. But nonetheless, him entering into this competition all of this is very faithful to the story, very faithful to the source material here. And it lets you know from the beginning of this film that you're not going to get the 87 version. Granted, we do get a small, kind of peek into the 87 version with a very clever play on how they use Arnold Schwarzenegger in this film. He's not particularly in the film, but it's just a very slick way that they introduce that character in the film that makes it a little bit of a hit of nostalgia for the audience. But just as it pertains to the competition of the Running Man, to the Ben Richards character, this is the type of role where, in all honesty, the premise is so silly, you need an actor who can transform it, and that's what you get from Glenn Powell in this film. Is his Ben Richards is super angry, super righteous, everything humanly possible necessary to make this character feel real and believable with the storyline. Because The Running Man into itself is a very odd premise. It is supposed to be a dystopian society and how the world will de-evolve into just back into the gladiator field, back into the realm of unaliving being a form of entertainment here. And that's what The Running Man, especially done here by Edgar Wright, poignantly points out, is that this is a society that now craves this. But they crave this because this also powerful network, it controls everything. And it's programming their mind to the forms of entertainment that they need to have. Again, it's a lot of parallels to the way a lot of people will perceive society to be moving now, down to the healthcare crisis. And in the film, we understand that a lot of these people are doing these desperate measures for healthcare to be able to provide the basic needs. It's a timely film that, amazingly, the original book was written in 82. In the original book, the story The Running Man takes place in 2025. So that unto itself is hilarious that we get that, and we get these parallels between how people feel we are as a society now versus how The Running Man depicts its futuristic society in it. But for The Running Man, you're here for one thing and one thing only: the thrills and the action here. And that's exactly what you get here. Edgar Wright has a gift at directing stagnant action scenes. Things that don't always have to be these big blow-up CGI moments, but they still give you the thrill of the hunt that you need to push a story like this forward here. And that's what you get out of The Running Man and out of Glenn Powell's Ben Richards in this film here. But the person who steals the show in this film is Coleman Domingo as Bobby T. Bobby T is such an integral part of what makes The Running Man novel good, and also what makes this movie extremely entertaining, because you needed someone to be as over the top as humanly possible of a game show host to really enthrall an audience. And I think Coleman manages to pull that off in spades in this film. At times, he becomes the most entertainment aspect of this film here. And that says a lot because Glenn is really good in this film, playing this Ben Richards character and keeping you interested in his storyline. Now, we don't necessarily get it in the rest of the runners in the film. They just feel like that characters are just thrown in there to get rid of them. And you kind of wanted them to be a little stronger to help push the Ben Richards story even more. But instead, that's what you have Bobby T for, played by Coleman Domingo. And then you have Josh Brolin, who just plays an evil person. It's nothing particularly great that sticks out about Josh's portrayal of Killian in this film. Killian is evil, and Josh just plays it as evil as humanly possible here. Again, it feels like a stagnant character, like something that a stock character from any 80s action movie that you've ever seen. Even though that's the case, with that being said, what you're here for is another star-making performance from Glenn Powell and a scene-stealing performance from Coleman Domingo. The world that Edgar Wright has created with his Running Man is such a far departure from the 1987 film that if it's a chance that you don't know that this film is based off of a Stephen King novel and you possibly think it's just a straight remake of the 1987 film, it can leave you lost a little bit of exactly what's going on here. So I'm not going to say this is not a film where you at least need to have some idea of the source material, because that will help, especially if your only correlation to the Running Man is the 1987 film. But if you understand that it's based off of the book and you understand just how faithful Edgar goes to the story in the book, then I think you can appreciate the Running Man on another level. Now, unfortunately, by the time we get to the third act of it, and this film is about 20 minutes too long, but when you get to the third act of the film, he takes certain liberties at times with the story, and you don't necessarily get the shock and awe ending that you get from the novel. They kind of wrap this up in a happier little bow. I wish they wouldn't have done that, because just to have this story, you really need those emotional beats that you got out of the book in the film. And I think it could have hit a little different. Instead, by the end of it, it's just everything is peaches and roses by the end of the film. And after the shock and awe of the first 2/3 of the film, I think that can leave people a little distracted once you get to the conclusion of the film. But if you're here for solid action, if you're here for great direction, if you're here for another star-making performance by Glenn Powell, I think The Running Man is the perfect fall action film, which we have not gotten too many really good fall action films, but this one fits directly in the queue of something that you could just turn on and it'd be very breezy, easy entertainment. So, The Running Man, again, it drops this Friday, brought to you from Paramount Pictures. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give The Running Man an 8 out of 10. This is another faithful adaptation of Stephen King's work that I think audiences will absolutely love. This is another Glenn Powell vehicle. As much as you may have loved him in Twisters, as much as you may have loved him in Hitman, I think this is the film that really gets you to understand that his charisma can really push anything forward here. At times, The Running Man being too long, not always being paced as well as you would like, it then tends to lean on Glenn Powell, and he does a brilliant job of carrying this film. And it's something to really see, especially, again, Coleman Domingo as Bobby T. It feels like this role was made just for him, and for him to be so over the top. At times, so evil, but so nice and evil that it really enthralls an audience to watch it. But again, it drops this Friday. Check it out. Let us know what you think. This has been another movie review brought to you from the Culture Collective, powered by Big Gold Belt Media. Peace, people.
I